Hey everybody, welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be talking about some of these defensive fortifications in North America and some repeating patterns that I came across that I thought you might like. So should be interesting. So let's get into it. Now our journey here today starts with the historic Fort Wood, and it is notable because the Statue of Liberty happens to be sitting on top of it, and I'm sure almost all of you have seen images of this fortification, but we're told it was built in 1811. I think it's older, and we're also told that the statue and the pedestal were built in 1886. Now I tend to think the pedestal is older. I'm not sure about the statue, but I want to focus really on the pedestal and the fortification because I think that in between the construction of these two structures, whenever they were built, I think there was a destructive event that is not in our history. And what is also of note about this pedestal is it was constructed in part, one of the building materials was this type of cement referred to as natural cement or Rosendale cement, the location in New York State where it came from. And this cement can be found to have been used with the Brooklyn Bridge, and as mentioned, this pedestal. And this type of cement, it is associated with a lot of the structures that people are questioning in North America, largely from the 1800s. It turns out a lot of them were using this cement. Even the use of it, a lot of people forgot it was even ever used, and it was rediscovered in the 2000s and reverse engineered, and I have a whole video about that. Even the statistics for the use of this cement in the 1800s, turns out no public statistics were kept. So a very murky history indeed. But this pedestal, there are some construction images, and the one on the left is a drawing from a magazine. The one on the right is an actual image, but I'm not sure it is indeed legitimate. I think this is a fraudulent image. That's just my opinion. I do believe that there have been these two phases. I talk about it all the time. You had these star cities, these fortified walled cities. Then there was some event. A lot of these places got partially or fully buried. We're told in the case of Charleston that it was intentionally buried. And then what gets built on top are a lot of these structures dated to the late 1700s, 1800s, like this Charleston City Jail, and they happen to be using this natural cement. So that's why I'm interested in that natural cement. So I think the pedestal is older than they're telling us, but I think the general flow of events is something like this. You have the Roman Empire, what we call Rome, and then there was an apocalyptic event, in my opinion. And then at some point after that, you had the rise of these star cities, star forts, walled cities, fortified cities. And then there was another destructive event, and again, both of these not in our history. And then you have the rise of these old world buildings, the Tartarian buildings. So that's generally how I see it at this time. And our history has been reimagined largely. So I just wanted to give you a visual there. But if you even go less than a half a mile away from Liberty Island, there's Ellis Island. And its history is fairly interesting because there's also some unique buildings, including this former immigration station. I believe it's a museum now. Once again, prior to this construction, which we're told was, I think, 1907, there was a great fire on this island, which burned a lot of structures completely to the ground. And why that's of note is because there was another fort on this island as well called Fort Gibson, and portions of it were uncovered in 1992. We are told it was intentionally buried using landfill beginning in the 1890s, but apparently nobody can quite agree as to where the landfill actually came from. So I just wanted to point this out because you have basically this period of fortifications, and then there, in my opinion, there was a destructive event, and that's where we have these stories of a fire and land reclamation, and then you have these buildings. So you see that a lot, and you can observe it with these defensive fortifications. So now let's go to the West Coast and talk about Fort Point in San Francisco. Now, this is one of these, it's considered, I think, a third system defensive fortification built in the mid-1800s, we're told. Prior to its construction, there was a Spanish fort called the Castillo de San Joaquin, and we're told that the cliffs on which this fort stood were leveled. As a result, nothing remains of this fort today. So again, these two phases, and I think there was a destructive event in between. Where things really take a turn, at least for me anyway, is looking into Fort Jefferson again. Again, very popular fort, 16 million bricks. But I wasn't aware that there are actually two types of bricks used in its construction. And once again, we're told it was largely built over a course of approximately 30 years in the mid 1800s. And we're told it was never finished. But when you really look into it a bit more, there were two types of bricks used. Yellow bricks were placed, we're told, before the Civil War from Pensacola, and red bricks were shipped from Maine during the Civil War. So why do I think that's interesting is because this upper level of bricks is the red bricks, again, which we see with a lot of these Tartarian buildings, right? So I'm wondering if this fort, the lower portion of this fort was pre-existing, and then there was the destructive event, and then the people that came after just kind of built on top of a pre-existing fort. Again, purely speculation, and it's because of this pattern that I keep observing. And another reason why is because when you look at some of these old maps, I think this is like from the 1580s, some of these old Spanish maps off the coast of Florida, some of these maps show what I would imagine is a six-sided structure with the word Tortugas next to it. And Fort Jefferson is a six-sided fortress in the Dry Tortugas National Park. So that's why I'm wondering if this same pattern applies to Fort Jefferson, because they're telling us this was completed over the span of about 30 years. But I'm wondering if it's two separate phases, actually, both older than we're being told. But again, that is my speculation. And even if you go approximately 70 miles to the east of Fort Jefferson, if you go to Key West, there's another fort, Fort Zachary Taylor on Key West. And you can observe these two phases again with this particular fort. Today at Fort Taylor, one can see that there are at least two different types of bricks used in the construction of the fort. And we're told that there were shipments of bricks and granite from New York. And they even mention ancient impermeable limestone was used. I'm just wondering if the same pattern applies here as well. So this is something I'm going to keep looking into, but I wanted to pass it along to you guys. And to finish up, speaking of this natural cement that I talked about earlier in the video, courthouses, we talk about these courthouses all the time, and a lot of them have been demolished or have gone through transformation, and this courthouse is no different. The Napa County Courthouse, which is in California, and this is how it used to look, and we're told it was constructed in 1878. And it's lost its cupola. They were doing restorations on this courthouse more recently, and they found out that the outer walls consist of masonry wall assemblies covered in this Rosendale cement, this natural cement, which we find associated with a lot of these old world Tartarian buildings. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because again, this is on the West Coast, and we don't get a lot of information about the use of this natural cement on the West Coast, but it does exist. So I just wanted to add that here at the end. So I think that's about all I got for you for today. I do want to give a big shout out to my channel members. Thank you for all your help and support. It's greatly appreciated. As well as my patrons, thank you as well for all of your help and support. It does help a lot, so thank you. So with that being said, until next time, take care. Bye.